I'm Susie from Nail Career Education. In this video, we are going to focus on application of acrylic, liquid to powder ratio, and how not to get acrylic hardened in our brush. Let's get started. I recently released a professional acrylic starter kit. You can find that link in the description below. But in the meantime, if you have the products or my kit, we can do this together with whatever you have. So when I do teaching in my classes, I highly recommend we work on plastic fingers or a plastic hand. We got to get this down before we start doing it on people. And that's what we're going to work on today for quite some time until we get this. And these are the things that I have supplied in the kit, but if you've got them, that's great. My favorite oval 8 brush is in the kit. Now I have one here that I'm working with, but I just want to show you the new one. Sometimes when you get new brushes, they can have a powdery substance. Do you see this dust that I'm pushing up? You want to get that out of your brush before you start working with it. That powder is to keep the shape for your brush while it's in shipping and transit and all that stuff. So you just want to get rid of that first, okay? Sometimes you can go like this. Just be careful when you do that. You don't want to misshape your brush, okay? So you want to get all that out. And then you've got your brush. So this is a glass dish that I provided in my kit, but any dish that you have would be good. So this is liquid monomer. This is the acrylic monomer you're going to be working with. Now don't pour too much because we don't want to waste it. Now I've got my brush. Now what I do with my brush here is I kind of recess it in there and just, especially if it's a new brush, I just kind of make sure the bristles get saturated while it goes into the liquid monomer. And I can release sometimes by hitting the sides. I do that quite often. But I recommend don't leave your brush in there like this. Any type of jar, especially one that's more up and down, because it can bend the tip. Look at that. And you don't really want to bend that because you totally misshape your brush, and that can be very annoying. Okay, so in my kit in particular, and you can grab anything that you have, I include 2 little towelettes. These are super, super absorbent. And we need that to make sure we don't get it clumpy and lumpy, and also to release any product that you have and to clean your brush in between, okay? I'm just getting everything set up before we begin. That's what this is for, okay? Now, one of the number one things we do, we all do it, whether you're a beginner or advanced, at some point you're going to do this, is we get acrylic stuck and hardened in our brush. One thing I really couldn't include in the kit was acetone. It's very hard shipping across the borders into different places. But acetone you can purchase in a local drugstore, maybe if it's Sally's you've got nearby you, you can get some acetone there. And you might need it if you do this boo-boo. Now let me just get some powder. So I'm showing you this step now because I don't want it to be too late, because once it's too late, it's hardened in there. So I'm trying to show you now so we don't get it hardened in our brush and we got to run to the store and get some acetone. Now how the mistake happens is you want to get your brush wet. I'm just getting a little bit of liquid on my brush, and then I'm going to put it in my powder, and I've got that there. When I put, let's pretending I'm putting it on the finger. I don't want to because I want to get started doing this. But when I put it on the finger, let's pretend this is the finger. When I put it on there, sometimes there's still product in my brush. If we don't release that completely, as we're working away, it slowly gets hardened in there. It's got a lot of liquid on there, but it slowly gets hardened in there. And then if you go to do something, you put it down and you're adjusting something, or you go wash your hands or get a drink or whatever, it can harden right in there when you come back. And then it's too late to get it out. So what I want you to do as you're working with all these videos that I'm putting out, every time I'm working with liquid to powder, just check yourself every now and then. And I do this. You can do it with your finger, but you don't really want to do that and gum up your fingers, right? Just take a cuticle stick or your finger or anything that's sharp, the edge of a credit card, whatever you got, and just make sure, don't put too much pressure, but just kind of fan your brush out and make sure there's no little bits of acrylic in there. And let's pretend there is. I'm just going to get one in there. So let's say you got some acrylic that's stuck in there. What you want to do is you literally just want to push that right out of your brush while it's still soft, okay? While it's still curing, pliable. Once it hardens, we're in trouble. Once it hardens, we need that acetone. And if that does happen to you, get your little acetone, put it in a little jar, soak it in there for a few minutes. If it's really hardened in there, like an overnight kind of thing, you may need to soak it for 5 or 10, 15 minutes, okay? So you can save your brush. We don't want to go there. So let's try to avoid that together. Okay, so I'm just gonna move that out of the way. So don't forget that. That's really, really important, okay? Let me just turn this around so it's a little more clean. These are pretty absorbent little towels. That's why I supplied them in the kit for you. Just like a paper towel, but it's a really absorbent one. Okay, so now we are going to start with the application. Now there are many facets to application. There's the cuticle area, there's the arch, and there's the free edge and the end of it, okay? But today, I'm going to focus on all three, and then subsequent videos I'm going to do is going to break each and every one of those areas down for you, okay? Here's our, what are we going to call this? A helping hand. I like to give them names. Oh, this is what I supplied in my kit. You get some forms, and the little towelettes are included, okay? Just so you know that you've got them. I'm just going to use this form here. So here's my forms. I just recently did a video on forms and form placement. It was just a basic video, and I'm still going to do another video to cover, you know, almond and stiletto and all the different types of shapes. But this is basically a salon nail, and that's what we're going to do now. So you can refer to that video if you just need a little brush up on where to place the forms, which is really, really crucial, and you'll see that in that video. So I'm going to put this form on this guy. Now we do not want to buff this plastic tip up in any way, shape, or form right now, because we want this to pop off so we can keep using this plastic tip over and over and over for our practice. So I'm just forming our little client here. I called my plastic hand in one of my videos Griselda. I like that name. I think it's fun to say. What's another fun name we could call her?
Fingerella.
Fingerella. Okay. Cameraman said it. Fingerella.
Bingy?
No, me not like that. Okay. So once you feel happy with your form placement, and then go back, like I say, go back and see that video if you need a little bit more instruction on that. Okay, so in my kit in particular, I have two colors I've supplied. One is called the Princess Pink, and it's just a beautiful, soft pink. You can put it over the entire nail, or just at the nail base, which is what I like to do with it. And there's another one here called Sugar Pink. Max is just releasing this particular pink with our kit. And it's got some sparkles and glitter and chunks of really pretty things in there. So here we go. Now this is hard. So be really, really nice to yourself, okay? Give yourself room to learn. It's super, super important. Liquid to powder ratio, you know? Liquid to powder ratio is very, very, very important. And if you're not ready to go on the tip yet, then just use the little towelette that I've given you. So liquid to powder ratio means how much liquid we have in our brush comparison to how much powder we're going to add by absorbing it with the liquid that's in our brush. We want that bead to be consistent, but getting that consistency takes some practice. We can make it too wet, we can make it too dry, and we can make it just right. So we attempt, every time we sit at the nail table, we attempt to make it just right every single time, but temperature of the room, temperature of the product, temperature of the client, humidity, where we live, all has a factor on how to get that bead just right. So we're going to keep playing with it until we get it. Just take a little bit. And you see, I can saturate my brush in here like this, but that's way too much liquid. So I'll go to the side here and I'll get rid of a lot. But I just literally dip it into the side. Just do a nice little dip. And put a little pressure on the side of that glass. I don't think it's really hard to show you is pressure on these videos. But just dip it in there, put a little pressure so you don't have too much. We just want to put just the very end of your brush in the glass dish. Just place the end of your brush inside the jar and gather yourself a little bead of acrylic. If it falls off, it's too heavy. And if it runs, then it's too wet. Let's place it so we're not too close to the cuticle. I always advise that for a bit. Now, then I go right to my paper towel, clean off my brush right away, and then I come right back to my bead of acrylic. Now I get pretty pushy, meaning that I take my brush and the angle is not tipping it right in, but it's more of a flat angle. I use a lot of the barrel of my brush right in there to flatten. But then I want to go into the cuticle area and I'm sort of pressing down at the same time and pulling toward me at the same time. So I'm trying to get that really smooth edge right at the cuticle. Gotta tell you guys, that is really tough to do. So when you're doing it and you're saying, I can't make it look like Susie, you won't be able to at first, okay? But stick with me, you will. If this was easy, everybody would be doing it. You gotta really work it, but with the right tips, you can do this. It's so much fun. Okay, so one thing I am noticing, and a common question comes up with my students is, it's really hard for me to see between the person's nail, or this tip, and where the acrylic is. So, I've got a bit of a darker color. Accent this one, it's called Eternal Beige. So I'm hoping to be able to see this. This is a color you can use on the nail plate. I don't particularly like to because I find it too dark, but that's why I'm using it now. It's not included in the kit because I like a nice softer pink near the cuticle, and I think you'd like that better too. This is a beautiful color, but it's meant for sort of a different application. But I'm using it right at the cuticle, so hopefully you can be able to see that. If not, I might have to try a darker color. I'm just going to get a bead of it, and I'm going to place it right at the cuticle, sort of what we just did, but I'm hoping this darker color you'll be able to see it a little bit better. So I flatten, don't flatten it right up to the cuticle skin or this plastic tip. You don't want it to touch. And then you just want to be able to sort of a little bit of pressure and flatten in at the same time, pulling toward you to keep that cuticle area completely smooth. Okay, do you see the difference in the color? So now we've got the cuticle happy. Let's work on the mid area. Now this liquid to powder ratio here, that bead looks pretty good. I'm going to put that bead right in the center, and I'm going to use again this part of my brush right in there, the belly of my brush, not the tip. And I'm going to flatten, 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 sort of trying to shape it into the shape of a nail. I don't know how long you want to go. We're just extending it out. I'm happy with that. And then I'm going to add another bead. Now I'm going to show you what too dry of a bead looks like. Okay, so if you can see that, see how it's like crunchy, and see how it's kind of falling and rolling off? If you push it down, it's like hard to pack it. It's not happy. It could even be drier. I've even seen them quite a bit drier. And I'll show you a wet bead because that's really common to make. When you have a wet bead like that, it doesn't cure properly. So that really is very bad because it can cause lifting. Improperly cured acrylic can cause discomfort to the natural nail plate. It can also build a resistance, and you can actually get allergic to it if it goes on to you wet all the time because it's really touching the skin. You don't want that. It's bad. Could develop reactions. Okay, here we go for the good bead. So now I'm trying to create the bead that makes my free edge. Now some people you'll see, if you go to some really good salons, they can do this in 1 or 2 beads across the whole nail. Yeah, that's great. That's a great style. You can do that, but don't let that be a guide of what you think you should be doing. I've seen experts do it in 3 or 4 beads. It doesn't really matter. You take as many beads as you want to get what you're looking for. One day it'll just be less and less beads and you can do it more accurately, but don't let that be a guide for you. Now we have the cuticle, and we have the end, and we have the middle. But what we don't have is an arch. Every nail needs a slight bit of an arch, depending on how long it is. The longer the nail, the longer and bigger the arch. So right now we need to put that arch in there to have this nail not come off. The reason why we build an arch in is because it creates strength and structure, so that nail is less likely to break or put up with everything that, the client's doing in a day. I like to refer to it as my arch bead. You put that guy right in the center. You don't have to go in the cuticle. Make sure you bring it right down to the sides. When I'm going away in the screen like that, that's my brush tapping onto the towelette, absorbing any extra liquid, and it's also taking any product off my brush so it doesn't cure in there, okay? That's what happens when I'm going away from the screen like that. Look at that. just blends all nicely into each other. Okay? Now we made this nail square. We didn't even talk about that. We just went ahead and made it square, didn't we? Okay, so sometimes I will look down the end of my nail and make sure, you can see that in the upper camera here. So from the other angle, from this angle, you're looking right down the nail bed, right down the barrel, they call it. And the reason why I'm doing that, I'm just seeing if it's thick enough at the end, depending how long I keep it. And I think I'm just going to give it a little bead to make it a little bit happier right to the end here. Make sure it's nice and structurally sound. You know, I know everybody's so, we get a little crazy about nail art and we want to see the nail art and stuff, but nail art's great. If it's on a structured nail, it'll stay on a lot longer. If nail art is not applied to a properly structured nail, you're going to lose that nail art. And then it's all that's a waste for nothing. So it starts with the structure and the build of your nail. Then you can put all the fancy stuff on top. Okay, I think we did it. So whether I'm practicing or playing, I always check my brush at the end of a session. And how I do that is I roll it, and sometimes if it's a little stiff, it might have something in there. So then I get it full of liquid, and then I just take my, oh, you know what? Look at that. I found that right in there. Look at a little bit of acrylic. If I walked away and didn't do this procedure, I would have come back to it the next day or whenever I'm going to do nails again, and I'm going to find that hardened in there. Now I'm very impatient, so what I will do is take a pair of scissors and cut it all out. Well, that just ruins the shape of a brush. It might get me through a fill, but I have to eventually go get a new brush. So if you do this, I've had some students brag to me that they've kept their brush for over a year. That's impressive. So anyway, clean that out and make sure that you've got no acrylic stuck in there, okay? So after I've done that, I actually condition my brush and leave monomer in it. That's right. Just leave it right in there. But don't store it in a jar like this straight up, because all the monomer can run back into here, into the barrel. And if it does that, when you go to work at it again, it can run back out, and that's old monomer. It can get into all your nails, so don't do that. That's why I provided you with a cap. I love brushes with caps. Just put it in the side there. You're going to protect it, and it's all ready to go for you next time you do some nails. Don't forget to put the lid on your liquid. Now this is dried, and that's how I check. It makes that clicking sound. If it's more of a, you can't hear it, it's not dry. So when I take nails off of people, off of this, you can just rip it off, but it's uncomfortable if you do that on a person. Sometimes I'll just loosen the skin here, and then I will grab it like this and pinch it and pull it down, and it comes right off, okay? Look at that nail. Look at down the barrel, down the side, we've got a nice arch. Now, that's our first nail. When I did my first nails, they were lumpy and bumpy. We call them turtles. That's completely expected when you're first learning. Don't let that throw you off. This is what we want it to get to look like, but that's going to take a while to get that. So if you're lumpy and bumpy, it doesn't matter. This is called sculpting acrylic nails. We are now, in my next video, are going to sculpt this, and I can show you how to make a pretty nail out of whatever you've sculpted from this, okay? That's great. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video. Have fun.